proven and undeniable. The real question is there a solution to stopping these social ills and bringing peace back to our streets, our workplaces, and our homes? Due to Healthy Families Foundation's innovative solution, we were blessed to be given the opportunity of partnering with the Ministry of Communications and Innovation to research our solution as a social science to find out if indeed this part of the solution, if this is part of the solution to a safer and more stable nation. First, let me quickly share what HFF is doing as the solution, and then I'll also quickly share the research methodology used, and then I'll hand over to Ashley to continue. We have a nationwide television show, which basically exposes the training or exposes the material to the nation. This television show is estimated to reach 1 million people on a weekly basis. Now, this, after exposing the people to the material of basically how to build healthier and happier individuals and families, we then got the opportunity to then go out to the regions, go out to these communities to actually interact with them, train them. We do this through an 18-day interactive and intensive family building campaigns which are meant to reach 3,000 to 5,000 people daily for those 18 days that we are interacting with them. To date, we have trained a total of 34,000 people across the country. We then follow up these people by establishing small support groups within the same regions where we've done the training. And these small support groups meet on a weekly basis nationwide, including in 12 of our prisons in Botswana. And then we also have a youth character development program where we go into schools and teach our young people, starting with Form 1s. So you're looking at 11, 12 years old upwards, training them on character development within the schools nationwide. And currently, we are blessed to be developing what we call the Restoration Center right here just outside Gaborone in the Katlan region, where we will centralize the work that we are doing, where people can come and be trained on how to have healthier and happier homes and work environments. Now on the methodology, again, just briefly, we had the privilege of working with a team which was led by principal investigator, Dr. Ramabu, who worked with 4 research assistants. And after obtaining ethical clearance from the Ministry of Health, they then went to various places in Botswana. And this started with a national survey where 723 people were surveyed and these were people that had been part of the program for 1 to 4 years at the time to measure the long-term impact. And this 723 was actually 5% of the 14,460 people we had trained at the time. In terms of qualitative, they also had 15 focus groups, which were made up of adults and youth, male, female, and also 25 key informant interviews with DCOSI, with police officers, with social workers, and policy makers. At this time, I'll hand over to Ashley, who will share results and the impact.
So when the people were asked about the different topics we taught them, communication and conflict, parenting skills, GBV prevention, absent father re-engagement, spirituality and values, substance abuse, and financial management, the participants said it was 71 to 81% very beneficial. When asked about GBV, 68% pre-campaign said my home is abuse-free, After the training, 81% said my home is abuse-free. So you asked a question about solutions. Hopefully you're encouraged by this presentation that these are solutions to the GBV problem. This isn't research on the problem. It's actually stopping the problem. When asked afterwards, 7% said that before this training, I was physically abusing someone. And after this training, I have stopped. Now, when you hear 7%, it's kind of like, oh, 7%. But 7% was 53 of the 723. Now, if we take that same and deduce it from the fact that we've trained 34,000 people, that would mean that 2,380 people have stopped physically abusing someone because of this training. Now, after the training, we then asked them, how many of you have stopped experiencing gender-based violence? 12% said after this training, we have stopped experiencing GBV. Again, at the time, that was 84 out of the 723. But if we take that same 12% to the 34,000, that would mean 4,080 people have stopped experiencing gender-based violence because of this training. When we looked at strengthening marital bonds, before the campaign, there was 20% of the couples surveyed that said we were seriously contemplating divorce. And afterwards, 5% said they were contemplating. That's a 75% reduction in people that are saying we're going to divorce and now we're not. 57% of the couples said my relationship was improved because of this training, especially in regards to finance and communication. We look at parenting and father presence. And by the way, these topics, the reason they were chosen is because they've been identified as root causes of gender-based violence. When couples are fighting, when fathers are not present, these are drivers towards the gender-based violence. So we have to figure out how to stop those problems if we want to solve this problem, because those are the root problems that are producing these fruit. So parenting involvement. When asked, how would you rate your parenting skills before? 68% said, I think I'm a pretty good parent. Afterwards, 82% said, I'm a good parent. This is because they're learning practical skills that no one had taught them on how to be good parents. 63% of the people surveyed said, after this training, I felt like in my community, fathers began taking a more active role in their children's lives. This is a big deal to us because if you do studies anywhere in the planet, absent fathers will always lead to more abuse in the home. So if we can have fathers present in the home, then that's going to help us as a nation. We also do programs, like my husband said, in the schools. So part of the MCI research was that we went back to Habani CJSS, where we had trained 587 students in a 12-day character development program. So we went back a year later through this research and asked them, how has your life changed since that training a year ago? So we saw a decrease in bullying, with one of the students saying, you know, before this, I used to make fun of that girl because she smelled and she didn't bathe. But now I've learned that I'm not supposed to say those things out loud. If I have something, I go directly to the person. We also have seen and heard of purity and purity and integrity. So this equips youth with negative peer pressure, skills, and drug experimentation, learning to say no. One of probably my favorite testimonies was in Habani. We've worked with hundreds of students across the country, maybe even thousands, but this particular one was probably a benchmark, like, wow, thank you, God, for this work we get to do. This kid had not gone to school, well, had not done school. He had been, the teacher said, so high that he was there, but he wasn't there, if you get what I'm saying. The notebooks would be empty. So during this time, he actually stopped doing drugs, confessed, to the point that he did a written confession that was so detailed with the dealers who were giving drugs to the students that I ended up having to call the police commissioner, who sent a car to get it because it was that telling. So we were able to, by doing this character development, actually do a full drug bust in the Habani area. So we were really excited about that, to put a stop to this, again, at the root issue. And again, the parent-child bond. Many of the children are saying they don't know how to communicate with their parents. I heard someone mentioning that children are told to be quiet, don't talk. We give them skills of how to respectfully talk, but to communicate. So the next one is when we were asked, do you think this would be beneficial for others? 97% of the participants said that yes, the whole nation needs this training. We need to know how to have healthier families. An overwhelming 97%, in addition to many written references from community, DCOSI, police officers, ministers, who have written and said this training is so impactful that it would be beneficial to go around the country. These are just 4 personal testimonies just for you to get off the numbers for a second and get to some real life people. One of the ladies was saying, and this is ladies, I mean, I heard the lady before saying, it's only men, this is what the assumption is, but when you get into the work, you realize that the gender-based violence goes between women and men. So one of the ladies says, I realized I was a perpetrator of verbal abuse, but now since this campaign, I've stopped. Another one of the participants said that when this training came, he had a 2-year-old girl who'd seen once. He was living with another lady, not the mother of that child. He was drinking, unemployed, and abusing everyone in his path. During the training, he stopped that. He moved out of that home, vowed to sexual purity until he got married, ended up getting his life straight, got a job. We have continued to follow up with this particular person. He's now preparing to get married. He's had a steady job since the Francistown campaign, and God has totally changed his life. Another one, which actually this happened with some soldiers that we trained, said that before the campaign they were spending money but they weren't understanding how to do a budget. And since the campaign, a year later, they had managed, just by applying the tips that they had been learning, they had managed to get a house and a car cash. So these are financial principles that are actually changing people's lives. A last one was in a drunk driving accident, and after the drunk driving accident, he lost his legs, and so he went back to alcohol to cope with what he had lost. During the campaign, he learned his purpose, he learned his value, and he stopped alcohol, and he's still in our follow-up groups even now. So why are we not doing this all over the country if it's working so well? Well, because we're a nonprofit who depend on donations to be able to do this work. And so because of the resource constraints, we're unable to continue to do this at the level with which the nation is asking for it. Another reason is because we're located in Gabs, so we depend on the volunteers we meet in our campaigns to continue the work, which by the grace of God, they do continue at about 50% rate. We would love to see that go higher, to continue to strengthen families nationwide to stop social ills. So what are our policy recommendations? We would love to see the Ministry of Education formally integrate the HFF Youth Character Development into the National School Life Skills Curriculum. We'd love to see government ministries institutionalize this work to the point that it's a budgeted line item each week, so that we don't have to spend so much time trying to raise the money. We can actually spend time just doing the work and helping the country at the base level of the root of the family. Another one is the BTV show. Some of you guys have probably seen our TV show on BTV. What you may not know is that my husband and I gave that show free to BTV. But just because it was free, that we gave it to free, does not mean that it was free for us. It cost us about 3 million pula in the production value of that, because we still had to pay for studios and lighting and editors and cameras. So we ran out of money to continue to do that. But there's not a day that people don't ask us, what happened to that TV show? It was really helping give family building tips to the nation. So BTV said they didn't need it. So that's something we would recommend, is let's bring back TV that actually adds value to the listeners of the country. The last thing we would say is, who is the citizens that are benefiting from this? The entire country, from students, couples, parents, government employees, community leaders. What is the citizen benefits to funding programs that strengthen families? Safety and peace, financial freedom, and active parenting. So what would be the social return on investment if we stop saying we don't have money to that because we're so busy paying for all of this? Well, number one, we would see an improve in academic performance. This problem with our children, our research shows, I think it was 47% of the students said, our grades are not low because of textbooks or classroom sizes or teachers. They're low because of the problems we're dealing with at home. Our young people are dealing with so many issues, they do not have the mental capacity to deal with studying at school because they're too stressed and traumatized by what's going on in their homes. So if we can solve the issues at homes, it's going to directly impact our future generation of learners. Some of these youth that are raised in this kind of environment are not being taught communication, anger management, and so they end up becoming youth delinquents and problems in our societies. But again, when we can teach them these skills in the school setting, we can break cycles of abuse and lack of communication for the next generation. Healthcare. We've worked with hundreds of DHMT clinics, nurses, doctors, and one of the things we keep hearing is a lot of the problems that we're seeing are solved during this training because a lot of what's going on in our health clinics, and everyone knows that our health cares are very overburdened, are preventable. GBV trauma, preventable if you stop the GBV. High blood pressure, high stress levels. These are things that are starting in the homes but ending up in our clinics and overburdening with ulcers and high blood pressure and stress and depression and insomnia. And these are things we can prevent at the root. Prevention is cheaper than cure in the long run. Another issue is our social workers. We work a lot with Ministry of Local Government, and our social workers are overburdened, and we get to help them when we strengthen families. Another one is the welfare expense. Do you know that our nation is covering a lot of dealing with the vulnerable children and these families, that if we could help the families become stronger, they would take care of themselves. Take a father, for example, who abuses his child. That child ends up reporting, to give that example, and the father goes to prison. Now we have a vulnerable child that becomes the responsibility of us as the taxpayers and the state, and a father in prison who now his medical, his room, his board, everything becomes the responsibility of the taxpayers. But if we could teach that man to be a better father, then that's 2 expenses that the government's not paying anymore. So although this might seem like it costs money to roll these programs out, they actually save us money in the long run. Again, with the judicial relief and community productivity. If we can help stop these problems, it's going to stop the police calls, the Kotla backlogs, and lower prison strain. Again, one of the things we hear in workplaces, because this training is BQA HRDC accredited, is that a lot of our people in our country are going to work, but they're stressed about their children who are doing drugs. They're stressed about their husband or their wife who's having an affair. They're stressed about things that are not work-related. So they're not productive at work because they're stressed about things that are going on at home. And again, if we can solve these root problems, we can create a national productivity plan that actually helps our nation move forward in our economy, which we mentioned was not doing so great. So what would be the cost of inaction? What if we keep saying we can't afford to help the families? It's not our thing. We've got to keep doing all this. Well, you're going to continue to see overcrowded prisons. You're going to continue to see heavy policing loads. You're going to continue to see preventable domestic trauma. Every newspaper tells us every week about how the GBV is rising. We're going to continue to see chronic stress and addiction, which is a coping mechanism to these problems. And we're going to continue to see a failure and decline of academic potential. And we're going to continue to see a eroded workplace output. So, as we've said, we're BQA accredited. He mentioned ethical clearance. We have followed all the regulations with this program. It is ready to scale and roll out. It's just missing the resources. So what would be the next steps? The immediate next step would be to try to help us to be able to present to Parliament, present to line ministries. The people that keep saying, we have a problem with GBV, we have a problem with substance abuse, what can we do? We're like, we're here, put us in, coach, on the sidelines. Let us be able to explain that this is an evidence-based program that has been tested with over 34,000 people in Rakop, SROI, Mahalapi, Francistown, Habani, Kanye, Hansi, Maun, Molipololi, Salibi Piquet. It has been tested around this country, and it works. To answer your question, we're seeing the abuse in cities and in villages the same. We're seeing it with the rich and the poor. This problem is not specific to anything. It is a nationwide epidemic of problems. So we would love to be able to present that across the country in different places for policy integration. The next step we would love to see is for ministries to establish a 3 to 5 year, ministries and corporates, to establish a 3 to 5 year memorandum of understanding so that we don't have to spend so much time trying to raise money to do the work. We can just focus on doing the work. Instead of every year having to go around, can we make a presentation? Please, can you sponsor? Even as I speak to you right now, we're trying to plan an event in Mochudi, and I'm having to spend most of my time trying to raise the money for that event instead of actually just doing the planning and preparing the place of Mochudi for this, which we hope to do in October for those of you listening. So that would be one of the next steps. And the last step would be hopefully to help us with some district level institutionalizing permanent HFF focal committees dedicated to continue to help after we leave to strengthen this. Thank you very much. We appreciate MCI for recognizing the social science of actually stopping the problems that affect every single area of our society.